Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Big Lee's Worlds podcast. It is I, your host, Big Lee, coming to you tonight live once again from the Boom Boom Room right here in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And tonight I am lucky to have a special guest with me. He is the owner of Pro Wrestling Trainwreck. Southern Sickness Cup will be coming up once again here in October. And with me today, I have Mr. JC Rotten. JC, how you doing today?
Doing well, man. Dealing with a little bit of a sinus infection. Luckily, not the Rona. So happy it's just a sinus infection and not me dying.
Hey man, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. I was actually going to bring this up to you before we started recording. It just reminded me. It was not until September that I found out that JC does not stand for Jesus Christ.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, Jill McKay, it was. We were at the NGI and we were talking, and she had said your shoot name.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And once she's like, JC Rotten. I was like, oh, so that's what JC stands for. She said, well, what did you think it stood for? I said, well, I actually thought it stood for Jesus Christ. And she's like, what? I was like, yeah, like Jesus Christ Rotten. Like some kind of like villainous death metal band.
Man, why didn't I think of that? That'd have been great.
Yeah, until then, I always thought that's what it stood for. So, but yeah, it's like, huh. So yeah, so for everybody who's just tuning in or tuning in for more of the music side that's getting into the wrestling side here, JC Rotten is deathmatch superstar. He cut his teeth down in Louisville area for IWA Mid South. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit of how you got started in the business here?
Well, obviously, I think most people listening, or some people that are new, like you said, my dad is former ECW wrestler Ian Rotten, also the founder of IWA Mid South. So I kind of just grew up in the business my entire life. I don't remember it, obviously, but at 6 months old, that was my very first wrestling show. And part of the reason why IWA was founded was to pay our bills. That was kind of my dad's way of providing for us when I was younger. So, wrestling has always kind of just been in my blood. I don't remember a time in my life where wrestling didn't play a big factor in it.
So when did you decide you really wanted to get your teeth cut into? When did you decide you wanted to actually be an in-ring performer?
Obviously, I had aspirations when I was a kid. It was so funny because I would go to shows with my dad, and people would be like, "Oh, who's your favorite wrestler?" Obviously, thinking Ian Rotten is going to be my answer. It was always Rey Mysterio.
Really?
Yeah. And the thing is so I was 5 years old, and my dad had bought me a compilation tape of the best of Rey Mysterio from ECW and WCW. And showing my age a little bit there, that it was a VHS tape. But so I popped this tape in, and man, all I played with was wrestling figures when I was a kid. I didn't have dump trucks and normal little boy toys. I had totes upon totes of wrestling figures. So popped the tape into my living room and sitting there playing with my wrestlers, and I was just enthralled. Especially the ECW matches with like Psychosis and Malenko and stuff like that. I was just like, wow, what is this? Because at the time, really all I was paying attention to at Mid-South was the deathmatch stuff. Me, Mitch Page, and Corporal Robinson. Obviously my dad, Pondo, Necro. So that's really all I was kind of paying attention to. But then this was a whole different ball game. This was something brand new to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched this Mysterio tape. I'm like, man, that was great. So then I started getting more into stuff like that. So then it became Rey Mysterio and the Hardy Boys. I was such a big Hardy Boys fan when I was younger. Jeff and Matt were it was Rey Mysterio, Jeff, Matt, and then my dad. That's how my favorite wrestler order went. And so it's always something that I wanted to do. And then as I got a little bit older, I got actually you and I have talked about this a little bit outside of the podcast, but I got into like the music world. So I worked with a lot of bands and helped out at concerts and stuff like that. And so I was like, maybe wrestling isn't what I want to do. And that was like ages 14 to probably 16, 17. But I was still going to wrestling shows. I was still reffing for my dad at the time. But like music had taken up a large part of my life. I was doing 2 or 3 concerts a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was like, well, maybe like wrestling like isn't my thing. Then I started dating a girl, and she, her dad was kind of like a around like Indiana type wrestler. And she was like, I really want to wrestle, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, initially my original plan when I started wrestling was just like to wrestle for a year or so, get her kick started, and then I was going to be done. Like I was going to go back to the music thing. And then I was a lot better than she was. But I also had the opportunity to be around Chris Hero and CM Punk and Ace Steel, Colt Cabana. Like these are guys that were in my house every single weekend. So like I would train wrestle with Hero all the time. I would chain wrestle with Claudio all the time. For people listening, that's WWE superstar Cesaro and former WWE NXT star Cassius Ohno. So like I was constantly wrestling with these guys. So when I started wrestling, I was just like emulating stuff that I saw because I didn't really train. It was just kind of that's what I did my entire life. So I kind of just knew it.
Mm-hmm.
So then like 17, 18 rolls around, early 19, that girl and I split. I start doing some more wrestling, start wrestling for my dad. I start training with my dad a little bit more, trained a little bit with Billy Rock, who has trained Trip Cassidy, Heidi Lovelace, Sue Jackson, the list goes on for guys that Billy has trained. Dale Patricks. So, the more I got into wrestling, I was like, oh, maybe this is for me. And I started slowing down doing the music because I was on the road a lot, doing just local shows. And I was like, oh, maybe this is for me. And then the night that was supposed to be my senior prom, I did my first death match.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I missed my senior prom to go to do a death match. And I was hooked from there, man. I fell into one barbed wire net, and I was like, all right, this is it. Like, this is what I'm going to do.
Oh, nice.
And just kind of off to the races from there, man. It literally in my blood and bleeding out professional wrestling.
So you talk about the music scene. What was the music scene like there in the Louisville area at that time?
So what I did is I worked for a guy named Terry Harper.
I know Terry.
Kind of. It was never really like a I wouldn't say like really worked for him because I was just kind of like his apprentice. I just helped out at shows and ran errands and really just did did grunt work, did whatever I was asked to do. So I would help with any big band that came in. I would help at smaller shows. There would even be shows that I would go to where I was just going to hang out, and then I'd be like, "Hey, man, you need something done?" And then I would go to the back and like fill up an ice bucket or whatever it was. So like I got to work with some decently sized bands, Lamb of God, ICP, All American Rejects, couple Tech Nine, Yellow Wolf, so I really got a lot of experience very quickly. Like my first show that I ever helped Terry with was ICP.
Oh boy.
And, yeah. So it's like off to the races immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And but then I got the the fortune of kind of being the guy. As I got a little bit older, I got to kind of help run like because Terry ran a lot of his shows at the time at a place called Expo 5. So Expo 5 had it was kind of like like this, and it was in the middle. It was a concert venue in the middle of a flea market. And the middle of it was kind of like this. I would guess you would say like airplane hangar almost.
Okay.
Like just this open dome, like insulated type thing. With some speakers and large speakers and a stage in it. And then off to the side, behind the concession stand, was a smaller stage, where guys, hey, if you sell, 25 tickets, you can play the small stage before Lamb of God plays or before, whoever plays.
Mm-hmm.
So as I got a little bit older, I started to get more involved with those guys, and kind of helping, not necessarily find bands, but like kind of got to be the scapegoat to things where like I would listen to certain bands. I'd be like, oh, these guys aren't bad, or these guys can sell tickets, or whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of my musical experiences. I was fortunate because I got to work with a lot of national acts, that I never thought I was going to get the chance to even see, let alone be around them in a backstage setting.
Do you have any favorite experiences with any of them?
I have two really good experiences, and then I have a super funny experience where so the first two was Yelawolf at the time this was like right on his cusp of signing with Shady.
Okay.
So like he was working on his deal, but he hadn't signed yet. I believe this is like right after trunk music got popular.
Okay.
So like this is when Pop the Trunk is on the rise. So Terry brings him in, and dude takes his shirt off on stage. Well, one of my things is I clean up the stage after the show. That's because you know how bands are. They leave
right.
water bottles and shirts and picks and whatever the fuck else. People throw shit on the stage all the time and everything else. So he was actually late getting to the building that day. So I cleaned up the stage, and then he was doing a line for a meet and greet because he had missed the meet and greet. But he was like nice enough to fucking stay after and meet these people, and like meet with their friends and family that were with them because he was late to the show. But I was like, hey man, here's your shirt back, and he was like, oh no man, it's cool, you can keep it. And I just thought that was like the coolest fucking thing, because like dude, because it was a Young and Reckless shirt, and dude probably has 100 of these fucking shirts. But I was like, oh man, that was super cool. And if you go back and watch like some of the Mid-South stuff in Jammers, I actually like wear that shirt to wrestle in.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it was just like something cool. And then my other favorite experience was Tech Nine came in, and this was the Sixes and Sevens tour. And so brand new album, big hype around it. And this was like right when Strange Music started really signing a bunch of people. So like Chris Calico was on the tour, Ritz was on the tour, Stevie Stone. But I watched Stevie Stone because he opened for Tech. And so I watched Stevie Stone from the time that he gets off the stage to the very end of the show. I watched this man proceed to go to 4 different women in the crowd and go to 4 different parts of the building and have sex with 4 different women.
Nice.
In the span of like 4.5 hours.
Nice.
And on top of that, dude gives another chick a hotel key. So there's 5 in one singular night. And a Tech Nine tour is not a small tour.
Right.
So I can only imagine this dude is probably doing this every single night. So I was like, man, what a fucking G. Like, dude is just out here, just living his fucking best life, opening for Tech Nine, probably making a decent stack, and just gets to fuck whoever he pleases.
Man.
So then my bad experience was I worked with Lamb of God. And this is right after Randy gets out of jail.
Okay. Now I'm gonna tell you, gotta tread lightly here.
The crazy thing is, it's actually not about him.
No, I was just gonna give you a hard time. Lamb of God's one of my favorite bands.
No, they're super cool. They are fucking awesome dudes. Like, the band itself never had an issue with. Like, the nicest fucking guys. Their manager at the time was a super asshole. Cause, you know, in certain towns you get like hospitality list. And so like this dude was so upset that we forgot his non-alcoholic beer. When 15 minutes ago I watched this dude rip a line of cocaine. So I was like, that kind of defeats the purpose of, like, you can't, like, I guess he's trying to balance himself out with non-alcoholic beer and cocaine, but I was like, dude, you're already killing yourself. Just drink the beer.
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep your body, you know, you can have the booger sugar in your body, but you can't have the hops in it.
Yeah, man, like, I was just like, what? Like, you're upset over non-alcoholic beer, but you just did a giant line of cocaine.
No, when it comes to Lamb of God, though, like, I love them. Like I said, they're one of my favorite bands, but they can be very, like, when it can be very hit and miss when it comes to interacting with the band, I guess the way you could say.
Yeah.
Because I've seen, you know, Randy and the guys be some of the, like, nicest guys in the world. And at the same time, I've seen, well, Randy in particular, because that's pretty well who everybody wants to interact with, not have the best of days, I guess you could say.
Crazy enough, man, when we worked with All American Rejects, they did their meet and greet at the end of the night, too. And they just, like, set up tables, like, across from their merch tables and just had people come up and, like, taking pictures and stuff. And I was, you know, because, like, they're, you know, not a small band whatsoever.
Right.
And at the time I worked with them, it was when that song "Give You Hell" was, like, really popular on the radio.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so I was expecting these guys are gonna be assholes. And they were just the nicest, chill, down to earth dudes. You know, the guitar player, like, walking his dog around and just hanging out, like, you know, I was like, oh man, like, it's so weird because the people in you know, wrestling's like it too. You know, people don't realize how close wrestling and music are. When
That's very true.
Interaction with people, but it's like the people that you would think, like, oh man, these guys are gonna be assholes. It's like the complete opposite, you know. And then just some fucking schmuck who got on the show is like the biggest dickhead in the world.
Oh yeah, I was going to say now, like, my All American Rejects story. I seen them. It had to be, I think it was 08 or 09. So it was the tour they did with Shiny Toy Guns. They came to St. Louis, and we were sitting in the balcony. It was a date I went on, and we ended up sitting up there besides these two middle-aged people at the time. And we were talking with them, and they're like, oh yeah, we're just kind of sitting up here. We brought my daughter. She's like 14, and she's down there in the front row. And like when it was silent, like they would yell out to her, and she'd turn around, yell, and wave back at them. Well, the singer had did some kind of crowd chant or something, or whatever it was. It ended up for the girls to encourage the girls to take their shirts off.
Oh wow!
So this girl ended up taking her shirt off.
Oh no!
And her mom yelled out like, "She's only 14," and then she just like darts up from the balcony to run down there to stop her. Oh, I just started cracking up laughing. But definitely, though, like you said, though, people think that, like, it's not really that best of a segue there, but people think that, like, some of these people are just, like, the worst and they're the nicest, and it's vice versa. I've met Phil from Pantera quite a few times.
Yeah.
Every time I've met Phil, he's been a great guy. You know, he's kind of hard. He's got a harsh sense of humor to him.
Yeah.
Which a lot of us do. So, you know, it just kind of meshes. but he's always been super nice. But at the same token, the people like I thought would be the nicest were the absolute worst.
Right.
You remember Evanescence?
Yeah.
Amy Lee, oh my god, she was like one of the worst people ever to meet.
Wow, really?
Her, Jack Black.
Wow.
Jack Black cursed out the people at the end of the show. There was like 15 people outside where they line up at the pageant in St. Louis, to where like if someone's going to come out, they're going to come out there to meet the people, and he just cussed them all out as he walked by. And Kyle came out and apologized for him doing that. But yeah, it's just like, you got to be kidding me.
People probably tuned into this podcast to hear us talk about wrestling, and then we got on
right
complete opposite. At least the music listeners will be
yeah, they're gonna be like, yeah, because that's actually the next guest coming up on here after this episode is a guy, his real name's Rush, but he goes by the name POW, Pimps on Wheels, and he's actually a St. Louis rapper big in the Juggalo community. So usually if either ICP or Twisted or somebody like it comes through St. Louis, he's on that tour opening for them.
Oh, dope.
But yeah, but like I said, some of them, and you end up with some strange situations. Like you ever heard of the Butcher Babies?
Yes, yeah, I work with them.
So whenever they started really get going, I was actually I felt bad. They came out a few years ago. They were talking about the tour that they did with OTEP.
Mm-hmm.
And like how OTEP was saying all this bad stuff about them. I was actually at the St. Louis date from that, and I could tell you OTEP 110% lied. She was one of the absolute worst people ever. And the Butcher Babies are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet.
Yeah, it kind of in the same sense, I worked within this moment with Maria Brink, and man, she is such a sweetheart of a human being. Like, just the nicest, like, down to earth, and you would figure, because she's a gorgeous woman,
right?
And you would figure that, like, oh man, she's got the success, like, she's gorgeous, she's gonna be terrible to deal with. But man, she was so nice to all the crew, so nice to everybody. Like, just because at this time, she was doing this thing where they would bring out this like circle, like podium type things, stand. And she would stand up on it and sing while people like moshed around her.
Oh, nice.
So like, obviously, you have to kind of rehearse, especially being in a different room every single night. That's something you have to rehearse every night. And so like they're doing rehearsals, everything. And, she like just greeted everybody and was so gracious and just super cool to deal with. Same with the dudes in Motionless in White. Like, they've always been a blast to deal with.
So I met Motionless in White. I can't go out and say like I'm a huge fan of it, but it was a couple bucks extra to meet them when I bought the ticket, and it was in the middle of winter. So I got into the venue early. So I'm like, of course, I'm going to buy it and meet them, check them out. Because they had, I think it was like For Today, and Ice Nine Kills open for them. And I was a big For Today fan.
Yeah, I think I remember this tour. Because I think I was one of the tours I helped out on.
That's because it's called like the Black and Something tour. But anyways, so we go in there, and we're going through the line. Like, I know very little of anything about Motionless in White at the time.
Right.
But I go in their little Q&A, and like you have like there's all these like gothic people in there, like all their face paint, skin type black, Hot Topic clothes. Fuck. And literally you can go back and look at the picture of the meet and greet. There's me in my All That Remains hoodie, baggy jeans, and steel toe boots.
Oh my
looking
God.
Like I do not belong there at all. So like we're standing in line, and you got all these people are like so nervous, fangirling, just to go up and talk to Chris and them.
Yeah.
And I forgot something happened. And when I got up there, I had the guy that was taking the photos and the tour manager. Something happened outside with the bus. So they left. So I had to wait for them to come back in to get the picture. So it's just an awkwardness of me standing there motionless and white, not having a clue in the world to talk about. So we end up talking about the weather.
Jesus.
Like it was that bad.
Oh man.
Because it's like I don't really know what to talk to y'all about. Like I'm sure y'all don't want to talk about the opening bands.
Right.
And I'm 6 foot, 300 pounds in baggy jeans and steel toe boots. Like I don't necessarily fit your demographic here.
Right.
But between that and probably, honestly, I was gonna say probably my best experience when it comes to bands, going back to the Butcher Babies, is they toured with this band called, how do I say it right? It's a Marianthe or something like that. They had a
Yeah.
song called Drop Dead Cynical. Well, anyways, like in East St. Louis where the Pops is, there's a strip club across the highway or across the train tracks,
Mhm.
and they're like, "Hey, we're going to the strip club." Because at this time, like I had went to like they would play St. Louis constantly. Every
Right.
tour came through St. Louis. So I think this is like the 6th time I saw them in a row. So whenever I would walk up to the merch stand after the show, they're always like, "Hey, it's Big Lee." So I was talking to him and I was like, I don't know. I got to work the next morning. I may be over, but probably not. And they're like, "Well, if you do, just come on over. We'll be there in about an hour." So I get leave to get back into St. Louis to drive down to Cape. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. I'm going to have the chance to party with the Butcher Babies at the strip club, or I can go in and get rest before work. I better turn around and go back to the strip club.
Oh damn.
So we go over there, and I actually still have the video on my Instagram. One of the things at the strip club is they have like like a mechanical bull.
Yeah.
So they have a mechanical dildo,
Oh my god.
and I have a video, and like I wasn't even gonna take a video of it, but Heidi is like, "You got to record this," and I'm thinking, okay, you'll probably regret it, but still to this day, she liked it and commented and laughed. But it's just a video of her riding this big old like 8-foot mechanical dildo. So yeah, it's like I said, the music business. My time of helping do some promotion and advertising for Death by Metal STL in St. Louis, it definitely has its experiences there. But yeah, like you said, going back to the wrestling, so would you say a majority of your time your career was at IWA Mid South?
Yeah, majority of it was, and I felt there's kind of two parts of me, because there's a part of me that like blames it on myself because I never really made the chance, or trying to took the opportunity to get out there and do things.
Uh huh.
And then the other part of me like felt like it was almost an obligation to only be at Mid South and only be a Mid South guy. Because I don't know, it was kind of put in my head that like, oh, if people can see you all these other places, why are they going to buy DVDs or come to shows to see you here?
Right.
Which is a kind of fucked up way of thinking, but I was like, maybe you're right. Like, I can't tell you how many shows I canceled off of because Mid South had a show, or even shows for Mid South that I wasn't booked on. I canceled off shows because, oh man, we need your help. We need your help building weapons or doing this, or like the night that I worked VOW was So You Want to Be a Deathmatch Star for IWA. And
okay.
Man, like I just felt so like inside I was like, man, like I should be there, I should be helping these guys. Like, if something goes wrong, like it's gonna be my fault. Like that was like my thought process of this whole time, was like, I shouldn't be here, and then I had a fucking killer match with Marcus, and got a Please Come Back chant. Like it was such a good time, and I built a really good relationship with Bill from VOW. Bill's actually going to be helping out a little bit with Sickness this year as far as coming up with a couple of stipulations and everything. And some people might know this, but Bill from VOW actually was a big supplier of light tubes last year for Sickness.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, like he really hooked me up on a great deal with tubes. Really took care of me. Like, I would hit Bill up like probably once a week, just asking for advice and what he thought about an idea and everything else. So him and I chat on kind of a regular basis. So he really did a lot, even last year leading into sickness. But yeah, man, like as far as like being an IWA, part of it was my own fault, and part of it was I felt I don't want to say brainwashed because that's not the right word, and I don't want to be the guy that like buries people.
That's usually my job.
But it was very much a mentality of like, this is where you should be.
Right.
And for anybody that's friends with me on Facebook that's listening to this, like when I made a post the other day that was like, I'm never going to get the credit that I deserve at other places, but like the past 2 King of the Death matches wouldn't have happened without me and my wife. Like we bought a lot of the stuff. Granted, like we got paid back for most of it, but like we bought a lot of the stuff. The Guardians of Hardcore 2 that happened, like that show does not happen without my wife. Because some people know, some people don't. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I love it. I love being a dad. Like that's my main priority in life is raising my kid to the best of my abilities. And but my wife goes out there, she's a bartender and she busts her ass and makes good money and gives us a good living. Working on being an alcohol representative right now, like she's one of the hardest working women I've ever come in contact with. Like this quarantine stuff and her being off work is like killing her, man, because she just loves working. She loves going out there and busting her ass. But like those shows don't happen without us, man. And especially a lot of those Memphis flea market shows, a lot of the deathmatch shows, I was given very minimal materials and would come up with a lot of stuff to make stuff interesting. Like the Prince of the Death matches stuff, like I did a lot of that. If you ever watching the IWA videos and you see the lights and the fog and stuff like that and any kind of extra production value, that's all me. Because I felt like I had an obligation to make that place better than kind of how I was getting treated. I mean, if that, like I said, I don't want to be the guy.
Right. What? Because I know one thing that kind of started this back up was you'd gotten a little shout out during the first Guardians of Hardcore.
Yeah, man. Like, he gives me the shout out, and it was like validation for everything I did. But behind closed doors, it was like a constant battle, dude. Like, myself, he probably won't get mad because he shits on him publicly, but like Murdoch, Bentley, we would come up with ideas and be told like, no, that's stupid. And then a week later, we would be pitched the same idea as if it was their idea. And we'd be like, yeah, but like, we already said that.
Right.
And obviously you can see where the three of us are at now, as opposed to, being there.
Yeah, I was going to say, going back to that Guardian show, that's just the last, actually, I think it's the last IWA show I watched recently, and that's why it sticks in my head mostly, is it was even something along the lines of, like, I guess that they had been gone, and something happened, and they came back, and they had, like, he wanted to apologize because they were both stubborn, and
and like
double backhanded apology, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and I was a big part of bringing them back. I made the first initial phone calls to Reed. Some people might not know this, and I normally don't like to put Reed over because he's got a big enough head as it is. But Reed is actually the godfather to my daughter.
Okay.
When my daughter was born, I was living in Louisville at the time, and my wife, then girlfriend, was living in Lexington, which is about an hour and a half apart. And one night, I called Reed at about 9 o'clock at night and was like, hey, man, they think Tori might be going into labor. She's in the hospital. and I have no other person to call. And he came and got me, got in his truck, took me down there. No, didn't ask for gas money, didn't ask for any favors in return, nothing. Like he made sure that I was taken care of.
Nice.
And then between the birth of my daughter and that was my next time leaving Mid-South, Reed was the only guy that would call me and check on me and go, "Hey man, how's the baby? How are you? How's life?
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay?" And actually got shit for talking to me.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's very much that in a sense is very much brainwashed.
Uh-huh.
When you're there and you're speaking to people that are quote unquote the enemy, that's not good. You get a lot of shit for that, and that was kind of like just pounded in my head. So like, but yeah, man, like, there's a lot of shit that a lot of people don't know, and this is actually like the first time I'm telling people this.
Well, nice.
So kind of a big league exclusive here.
A big leagues world exclusive. That's what we like around here.
So it's like, because I'm not afraid to talk anymore, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a grown man. Like,
right.
I'm a grown man with a wife and a kid, and I just don't give a shit anymore. If wrestling for me were to disappear tomorrow, as long as I had my kiddo and my wife, that's all that matters. And he's very much a blackballing son of a bitch that will, call people, and
there is a reputation.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's that fucking guy. Like, he will make phone calls, especially to people that he is close to, or has some sort of influence with. He will make those phone calls and try to fucking get you out of doing anything. And that's honestly, besides my neck and everything, man, that's a part of why I got out of the business as an active wrestler, because I just got tired of being compared to him and in that shadow.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had the mishap with the VIP stuff with Sickness, and like immediately that was the first thing. I was like, oh, he's just like Ian. He's just like Ian.
Right.
But I was like, no, like he's intentionally fucked you guys. I did it accidentally. Like, I just put way too much on my plate. Going into Sickness, I was like, I want to do this, and dude, when Southern Sickness 2019 first started getting booked, we could have ran for 5 days straight with all the stuff that I had wrote down.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife was like, all right, calm down. Like, you gotta make this, a realization. You gotta make it realistic.
Right.
And
so
like, yeah.
let's look at that here in a second. Let's talk about this. So at this point, you had a career with IWA Mid-South, which, for those of you that are not aware of IWA Mid-South or things like that, check out IndieWrestling.tv, IWTV, Powerbomb.tv, whatever they call it now. And a lot of the back catalog is getting posted there. So make sure you go check out some of these great matches that JC's been in, including the one. Go ahead.
And don't get me wrong. I'm very grateful for my time in IWA. I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I was afforded by my dad, by IWA, as a company. But every opportunity that I got, I fucking earned, because I was bleeding in front of nobody every fucking week. I was doing dumb shit every week because it was drilled into my head that, like, hey, man, if you keep doing this, because one thing I will say was I was never asked to do anything that I did in the company. It was I always brought an idea to him, and I said, like, I don't know if you've seen the match where I wrestled Brad Cash, but like I dive off top of the fucking wall onto a pile of ladders with him underneath of it.
Oh,
and fucked myself up real bad.
Yeah, I imagine so.
And but I was never asked to do that. I was never asked to dive headfirst in the shopping cart. I was never asked to fucking um take bumps to the floor like I did, or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. I was never asked to do any of that stuff. I always went to him with these ideas and said, "Do you think this draws people?" And I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be the IWA guy, but I never was given the opportunity to be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
I was always on the back burner. I was always I only got the matches that I did when it was convenient to him. When he didn't have anybody else to wrestle Ricky Shane Page, then I got to wrestle Ricky Shane Page. When he needed somebody to lose, originally before the King of the Death that I was in, before they made that those 3-way deals, the only reason I got to wrestle Nick Gage is because he needed somebody for Nick Gage to beat in the first round. The only reason I got to wrestle Jake Crist was because nobody else in that match would have made sense wrestling Jake Crist. So it was those things that it wasn't like I was given the opportunity because I was good, or he felt like that I earned those. It was because it was convenient to him and it made sense at the time. And every time that I got put in that position where it was like, oh, hey, yeah, you're getting this match, I was like, all right, fuck it, I'm gonna kill it. Like my match with RSP, like I made it a fucking point to bleed my ass off. My match with Gage, like I made it a point to to go out there and swing for the fucking fences and knock it out of the park, and it's like I told you in those comments on Facebook that some people might have seen. The Mance Warner and I match at Guardians does not happen without me saying, "Give me Mance."
Right. That was one of the things. That's what I wanted to ask you about. We kind of wrap up here with IWA Mid South that time there. What do you got to say about Mance Warner? You got any great Mance Warner stories or anything like that?
Well, I don't have any like really good stories or anything like that. But that night going into Guardians, when I arrived at the building, he was like, "I'm thinking about putting you against Nate," and I was like, Because the funny thing was because I asked the week prior, I was like, "Am I even booked on this show?" Because at the time, I was like one of the only deathmatch guys on a regular basis, and I was like, "Am I even booked on this show?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I just don't know what I'm doing with you yet." And me working for IWA was very much a sense of creative has nothing for you.
I got you.
I was told every week almost that, I don't know, we'll figure it out. But going in that Guardian show, walking, he's like, "I think I'm going to have you work Nate." And I was like, like, I love Nate Webb, don't get me wrong. But I was like, I just don't think that's going to, be good. Just because I was in that mindset that day of like, this has to be like a crowning moment. And so he was like, "Well, do you want to work Mance?" And I was like, "Yeah, fuck it, give me Mance. Like, let me and Mance, because this is like, Mance at the moment is at this time is like on the climb in Mid South."
Right.
And I was like, "Fuck it, give me Mance. Like, let me do this. Let me and Mance go out there and just have an absolute banger." And I told Mance, like, I was like, "Hey man, it's us tonight. Like, let's do this. Like, let's steal this fucking show," because we were just a match that was thought of that day. It was never meant to be anything like it was. And like a lot of people, people go ape shit for the fire tube spot.
Right.
I never asked to do that because I was like, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Right.
And I did that and it got a huge pop, and like, everything else, like, it was just very much a point of like, I got to prove myself. Mance is on the fucking rise. Like, make him look good, and make yourself look good in the process. And, Mance is very much a guy that from day, like, I wrestled Mance in some of his first matches in Mid South. And from day one, it was like, Mance is going to fucking beat somebody.
Right.
And when we got into that match and after that match, it was like, yep, dude's about to blow the fuck up.
It amazes me that he's not signed anywhere yet. It
Oh,
honestly has.
Yeah, I think as soon as stuff starts opening back up and he gets out there some more, does some more GCW stuff, I think it's only a matter of time.
Yeah. Shout out to Mance Warner if you're listening to this.
Yeah, man, Mance is a great dude.
Yeah, he's one of the best. He's another one of those people that is one of the nicest people in the business you can talk to. Well, I know we went down to that Tullahoma show, and he just as soon as his match was done, he just went sat out in the crowd.
Yeah, he's that guy, man. He's one of those people that he's just one of the fans. He just loves wrestling,
especially the WCW.
Yeah.
But yeah, so at this point, we can kind of say that IWA time is kind of hit and miss on where it happens next with it. So at this point, this new endeavor comes up, Pro Wrestling Trainwreck. Tell us about the origins of Pro Wrestling Trainwreck.
So, October of 2018, I go down, October 2018, I go down to Memphis to work for Eric Wayne. And we'd had some banger matches at Mid-South.
Okay.
And so Eric's like, hey, man, I think we can have a good one, blah, 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 And at the time, I never went down with the intentions of, like, I'm going to help run this show. So I get there, and he's like, shit's just disorganized as hell. And Eric will even tell this story to this day to people. But shit's just disorganized. There was cancellations. So literally, I was like, give me a list of who you got on the show, and give me a list of who you got on the show, and give me a pen and a paper. I'll be back in about 10 minutes. And I wrote an entire show in like 10 minutes.
Nice.
And I handed it to him. I was like, what do you think of this? And he's like, great. I love it. And so then the running joke became that night that, like, oh, man, like, we're just, this is like a 50-50 thing. And then November rolls around, and Eric and I start talking more, and he's like, what do you think about, like, us being in this together? And I was like, I don't know about that. Like, because I was kind of like on the outskirts of the business. I didn't really care. I'm still working Mid-South at the arena at this time. So I'm like still kind of in that mindset of like, I don't know if I want to take anything else on. December rolls around. I'm unhappy as hell in wrestling. Like I hate going to the building on Thursdays because I'm going to be putting shit matches with shit people that aren't on my level. And, not saying that I'm fucking Kurt Angle or anything, but at the time, the people that I were working, were fucking, Abe Knuckleball Schwartz. And I was, I was fucking Michaels. And,
right.
So I was like, December rolls around, January 2019, I officially leave Mid-South. And Eric calls me and he's like, so you ready to do this yet? And I was like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. And March 2019 was the first show that Eric and I booked together. Well, the first two shows that we booked together. Had two banger fucking shows. Did some rewind that a little bit. January comes to a halt for me. I'm like, fuck this, I don't know what else I'm gonna do. Middle of January, I decide I'm gonna run Southern Sickness.
Okay.
February rolls around, I start booking Sickness. March rolls around, we have those two banger shows. We know now that everything we're going to is building towards Sickness. Then comes June 23rd, 2019, which is the infamous New Albany, Indiana show.
Oh, yes. I remember that.
And everything comes to a screeching fucking halt again. Mind you, I'm going to call him a kid because he is my kid.
Uh-huh.
Or was my kid, I should say. He's not wrestling or anything anymore. But like the kid that gets hurt is over the age of 18. Knew what the fuck he signed up for. Had wrestled me in probably 6 or 7 matches before that. It was literally a freak fucking accident that happened. His dad starts all this shit. Beginning of July, I fucking hate wrestling. I don't want to book anything. I don't care. And Eric's like, you got to. He's like, you got this show coming up. Like, you got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's the same way. She was like, you just got it. She was like, get through sickness. She was like, if you're done after sickness, be done. She was like, but, don't give up. So I'm like, all right, fuck it. Like, I just got to get to sickness. Like, after sickness, I'm done. Like, and, so that's really like the origin of it, man. Is like it started as a joke and then just kind of snowballed into outside of my wife. Eric is probably my best friend.
Okay.
He knows almost everything about me. He knows, we've spent hours on the phone. Some people know this, and I'm the type that I do not mind talking about it. Some people know this, some people don't. I have really, really bad, severe depression. Like on medicine, all that stuff for it.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's been nights I've called Eric at 3:00 in the morning just fucking crying because I don't know what's wrong. I'm just a depressed fuck. And he talks to me until 4 or 5 in the morning. And so Eric is like really, we've had knockdown drag out arguments. But at the end of the day,
it's the nature of the business.
But at the end of the day, like, at the end of the day, like that's my boy.
Right.
I would fight tooth and nail for that dude, to be anywhere. He's legitimately my best friend. And I said it at sickness. I don't know if you were still around or not, but without Eric, I don't get back into wrestling.
Okay.
He really was my jump start of like loving the business again, because I hadn't loved the business for a while. I felt used. I felt taken advantage of. I just didn't care anymore. And then Trainwreck comes along and I was like, man, like this is where I cement my legacy. Like,
right.
At the end of the day, I don't think people 10 years from now, I don't think people are going to talk about JC Rotten as the wrestler. I think people talk about what Southern Sickness has become, what it is. I want it to be one of the deathmatch tournaments in the United States. I want it to be looked at with, the NGIs and the TOS and Tournament of Death and I want it to be looked at in that same accord.
So the one question I've always had, and I don't know if it's just from growing up around the area, but why Memphis?
So it really just started with, that's where Eric lives.
Uh-huh.
And so like he was doing shows there, and the South has never really seen death matches like we do. Mm-hmm. And I say that in the sense of I very much care about my talent. I very much care about every guy that steps in that ring. And a guy like Kevin Brandon, who runs Deep South, doesn't give a shit whether his guys live or die. And so nobody has seen the spectacle like we do it.
Right.
Or like how I was taught it is. So.
Because I mean, like growing up down in that area, because, we've had this talk before about how strict the commission is here in Missouri. Yeah. For the longest, there wasn't really indie wrestling around here. We would have to go to Arkansas, Northeast Arkansas or West Tennessee. And when anything that would come to like be advertised as a death match or violent or hardcore, something like that, it's chairs or it's every great once. I was actually talking to my buddy Jason about this the other day. We were talking about how long it's been since we had actually seen a full-fledged barbed wire match.
Right, yeah.
Local, like somewhere in our area, and we were talking about like it had to be when we were down in Arkansas. And still, even with something like that, it doesn't have the same as excitement as those shows that you're talking about there. And for those of y'all that are tuning into this or not really familiar with what we're talking about, Southern Sickness Cup, it was a 2-day deathmatch tournament that took place. Well, it took place last year and it's taking place this year again in Memphis, Tennessee. And basically, how would you? So for those listening that's not really familiar with the deathmatch, the term deathmatch, how would you explain it to them?
There's two definitions that I would give people because I think people are very confused on the two things. So there's hardcore wrestling, which, you know, would be defined kind of as the ECW style, chairs and tables and maybe some barbed wire. Then there's a death match, and you don't necessarily have to have light tubes and things like that, but it's very much a high intensity style of wrestling involving more dangerous weapons than a regular hardcore match is how I kind of describe it to people.
Okay. Well, yeah, because it's, to me, the basic, and it probably not the right way to say it, but I usually try to explain it when someone asks me, is it's like, most of the time, your biggest difference is going to be usually in a death match. It's pretty well seems to be there's going to be some sort of glass.
Yeah, and I think that's a common misconception of death matches is like, oh, it has to have glass, but that's why I tell people like it's just an intense style of wrestling with more dangerous weapons than a normal hardcore match because it can vary from barbed wire boards to saw boards to razor boards, except it really depends on what you're trying to give people in a sense of a death match.
So we're now leading into this, the first annual Southern Sickness Cup. So your mindset going into this, you want it to be automatically go up to the level of these notorious tournaments like the NGI and TOS, like he's talking about earlier. So your mindset is, let's talk about like booking. Let's book the Southern Sickness Cup. Like, what's your mindset going into this?
So essentially, I drove my wife crazy for probably 6 months because I would book and rebook and book and rebook, and I probably went through a full notebook of paper rewriting the show, rewriting stipulations, figuring out stipulations, and when we first started announcing it, people were like, where are the names at? Because that's all that matters in deathmatch wrestling anymore. So I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? So who's the first person I get on the phone with? Matt Tremont. And I call Matt and I'm like, look, bro, I need you. I was like, tell me, what you can do. And Matt takes care of me, calms me down, kind of explains to me like, look, bro, just do your thing. And that kind of eased my mind for a minute because I was like, fuck yeah, like I got Tremont, that's all that matters.
Right.
Then we announced Tremont and people were like, we want more names. So I think after Tremont we announced Raver and Jimmy Lloyd and a couple other people. And obviously Raver gets hurt, but before that he cancels to do Horror Slam. Jimmy Lloyd says he mistakenly took the Horror Slam date. If I had my old Facebook, I'd call him on his shit. Nothing. I don't have any hard feeling towards him or anything. But like he took a booking while he was in Japan. He took a booking on the East Coast for the 18th and 19th. I sent him a message before my old Facebook got shut down. I was like, hey, bro, I thought I had you for these dates. And he was like, oh, shit, yeah, you're right. Then it happens he takes the Horror Slam date. which I think at the end was an intentional thing. But I don't dwell on it because I just don't give a shit. And like 24 from the Onslaught was supposed to be Gage, but he wouldn't take a booking that far out. It was difficult. Not necessarily dealing with him was difficult or anything. It's just hard. He's a hard dude to book because he's so in demand. So we had a conversation in Nashville. Got his number. We talked a little bit. Then stuff kind of fell apart because Horror Slam had him booked. He was their champion, etc., etc. So I was like, fuck, what am I going to do now? So I get on Facebook and I get a hold of Masada, who I have a very strong relationship with. Masada can only do one night. He's got a family thing to do night 2. And anybody that knows, Masada's a fucking legend in this business. He's not a cheap talent. So I was like, I can't pay all that money for one night, So that was out of the question.
And I think that's one thing, like, I want to kind of interrupt here for a second and point out to people that are outside the business don't understand. Like one of the things JC said was, people complained about, like, they wanted 24 slots. They want 24 of the biggest names in the world to do this. What people don't understand is there's still a business mentality to this.
Yeah.
So if you book 24 of the top deathmatch guys in the world to do one tournament, you're probably not getting a seat in that building, or in this essence, a parking lot, for under $100 for the cheap seats. And I don't think you're wanting to pay top. How do I say this the right way? You don't want to pay, like, you're in essence, you'd almost be looking at probably paying like a WWE style pay-per-view ticket.
Right.
For these shows if you book something like that. So I just kind of wanted to insert that out there for those listening, for those that were complaining about it, or were complaining about what talent had been announced. Just think and realize it's like, do you want to pay $300-400 for a seat to the show, or are you still going to go back on the internet and complain because your favorite person wasn't there?
Well, and it wasn't just that, man. The guys that do this on the elite level, so to say, or the top tier guys, I respect them. A lot of them are my friends. A lot of them are good dudes. And like GCW puts on great shows over and over again. They could have the same roster and still put on banger fucking shows. These other places can have the same roster with those same guys and put on banger shows. But I wanted to give people an opportunity. I wanted this to be different because, even though there might be different stipulations, I didn't want to give people the same matches that they've seen for the past 5 years.
Right.
And that was a big thing in this, was I wanted to give people something different. I wanted to be different. I wanted to give guys, like Neil Diamond Cutter, like Zodiac, people like that. I wanted Akira, Cole Radrick. I wanted to give these guys this opportunity to put on a show without being like, yeah, those guys were good, but you remember that G-Raver match, or you remember that Schlack match, or whatever, Not saying that Raver and Schlack aren't great, but it's it's very much like if you watch a UFC card and Conor McGregor is the main event, are you going to remember the guy that was in the bantamweight fight in the opener?
Dude,
Probably not.
That was the thing I was telling somebody yesterday. Was talking about the UFC fights, especially the UFC coming back. It's like, I love watching UFC. I do. But for me to be like, or like I am with wrestling, like I can follow and tell you stats on, like I can't do that with UFC. I don't know what it is. Like, I know, like you said, your McGregors and stuff like that, but it's like the undercard, like I had no clue who these people are.
Right.
And I think another thing, like he's talking about with having the guys giving them opportunity, not just are you giving fans something they haven't seen before, but also on the business end, you're building that relationship, because those same guys are going to remember, if they get a stride where they're starting to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and when you come back to them for the next year or something like that, and it's like, hey, and they're like, oh, hey, you're the guy that kind of gave me the lift off to get started here. I'm going to help you out as well.
Casanova Valentine had so much fun in Memphis that weekend. He sat at my house on that Sunday and booked himself in sickness this year.
Oh wow.
We were sitting there talking. He was like, "Hey, bro, you got dates for next year?" I was like, "Yeah, they're the 16th and the 17th." And he was like, "Dope, I'll put him down." And I was like, "All right, man, cool." Like, not that I don't want to have Cass. I love him. He's a great dude. He's one of the easiest going guys that I dealt with that entire weekend, because I had an entire East Coast card put together, and literally all of these people have started dropping out. So, like, Cass was going to catch a train closer. I don't know where he's catching a train into, but he's going to meet the East Coast car and come down. So I was like, fuck, like, and like, Lloyd cancels, I think, 3 weeks before sickness, I want to say. So I'm like, fuck, what am I going to do? Like, this airplane ticket's going to cost me an arm and a leg, because it's out of Brooklyn.
Right.
And I'm like, shit, like, what do I do? And I'm freaking out, because I just don't know what the fuck to do. Because I don't want to cancel Cass, because he's one of my last remaining names left. And so dude, like, was even willing to take an 18-hour bus ride down there.
Oh wow.
Just to make the show. And I was like, no, like, by the time that I buy the bus ticket there and pay you extra for doing that, it's just going to cost me as much as the airplane ticket is. So we find him a flight. It doesn't kill us. Square that away. But, like, man, he was such a nice dude. Didn't care, about last minute changes or anything like that. Came that whole weekend. His ribs have been fucked up for a while. Like, the COVID stuff sucks, man. But, like, it's almost like this. How people keep making these jokes of, like, oh, nature is healing.
Right.
But, like, man, these deathmatch guys needed it, man. Like, Casanova was working on, banged up ribs for months, flying to the UK and working on them, there, and then coming here and doing, the 3 matches that he did for us, and then flying right back to Brooklyn and doing, I think he worked Outlaw the next weekend. Like, so it's like, dude's killing himself. So hopefully when stuff reopens back up and people can start to go to shows again, and, hopefully people do it safely. Hopefully, people go out and support these dudes, because it's like, these guys needed it. They needed this time to heal and get better and fix these wounds that they've been dealing with.
So like, definitely a big step going to it. Let's move towards, like, the week and including up to the event. Your mindset going into it, I'm sure you have to be a nervous train wreck. Excuse the pun, but going into this the week of and including that day, because I know when I talked to you a little bit that day of, you were a little bit on the stress side, to say the least.
That week going into it, I didn't want to answer my phone. I didn't want to look at text messages. I didn't want to look at Facebook messages. I didn't want to do anything, because every time I turned my phone on, it seemed like somebody couldn't make it, or, this or that, or fucking whatever. And then it just got to the point where I was like, well, fuck it. What's the point of even doing this?
Yeah.
And on the way down there, like, Matt Justice cancels because he doesn't want to ride in the car by himself. Eddie only cancels because he has a bad staph infection. Oren Veit cancels because his girlfriend is sick. Just all this shit. And I'm like, well, fuck it. Like, at this point, I'm going to go with what I fucking have. And, if it fails, I did my best. And then I got there, and Neil Diamond Cutter and Alex Herzog were there almost in the morning-ish when we arrived at the building, or that afternoon. I told Herzog, I was like, "You're in the tournament now, man." I was like, "It's you and Neil," and he was like, "Fuck yeah, let's do it! Like, I'm gonna go out there and kill it."
Mm-hmm.
And never. I'm gonna put him over here too because Alex never asked about more money, never asked what he was making, didn't ask what stip it was, nothing. Dude was just like, "I'm gonna fucking prove a point." Because before he was even booked in the tournament, I had him wrestling Casanova in the no ring. Because I wanted to give Alex something. I've known Alex for years, man. He's been a dude that's busted his ass all the time.
One of the nicest dudes in the business.
Yeah, and I was like, so like he took that spot in the tournament with like no questions asked, just like, I'm gonna go out there and fucking kill it. And so like we ended up putting together. I say we, but I ended up putting together the tournament like that night.
Uh-huh.
And trying to fill spots and trying to figure out what the fuck to do and everything else. And it was so funny because I was like, man, like, what do I do? And so randomly I was like, I get a hold of Tracy Smothers. And I was like, hey man, like, you want to do this thing? Like, I was like, I'll pay you, like, and he's like, oh man, I would love to, but I just got out of the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And so like Tracy was gonna do a death match for me, man, and that's like something that I always tell people about that weekend. It's just so mind blowing. Like, man, if Tracy wouldn't have been in the hospital, like Tracy Smothers would have been in Southern Sickness.
Oh, nice.
And so like I didn't want to answer my phone. I didn't want to do anything. I was always worried. And so like the night before, I just don't sleep. I think I got maybe like, we went to the hotel and got like maybe 3 hours of sleep. And like, that's like very choppy.
Mm-hmm.
Because instinctually I'm waking up and checking my phone to make sure nobody else cancels.
Right.
And anybody that was on that card can attest for this, because as every guy walked in that door, they got their money.
Mm-hmm.
Every guy got every dime that they were promised before they even stepped in the ring. Matt Tremont got handed his envelope as he stepped off the plane.
Oh, nice.
Because I did not want to be the guy that went, sorry guys, the house wasn't there.
Right.
So I came out of pocket before we even got the advance money, because we got the advance money the morning or the afternoon of getting to the building, because the building used their ticketing site to get the money.
Right.
So all the weapons that were bought, everything else, that's out of my pocket before we even pay the guys. So, and I think that's a common misconception that people think of, is like, they're buying these tickets and I'm getting the money right off the bat. Nope. I waited until October, 18th to touch any of that money. And as soon as I touched that money, it went right into envelopes and went right into the boys' pockets. And so like, it's just like with the VIP stuff, I got those, we worked on those posters forever. And my editor, James Duncan, like, I was messaging that motherfucker like every week going, hey man, this guy canceled. I need this person put in his place. I need this. And I'm surprised he didn't just tell me to fuck off.
Right.
But by the time people got to the posters, it was like 4 of the people that were on the posters couldn't even come.
Mm-hmm.
Or 5 or whatever it was. And I was like, I mean, I think you remember, because I was like, fuck it, if you want them, you can have them, but if you don't want them, like, it doesn't matter. Like, we still did like the fucking Q&A thing the next day, which unfortunately you couldn't be there for, and people got to do their.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because it was just like, I remember it was like, how do I say this the right way? You were like when you had to tell, like, you call everybody to the group. You had to, like, I just remember you having such a sad look on your face.
Yeah, man, I hated it because I never want to disappoint people. That's like my biggest thing is I didn't want people to deal with the same rotten experience that they've dealt with for the past, 20
Mm-hmm.
years.
Because I forgot. Because I think the only thing that really, I don't say bothered me or upset me was, and I knew about it like the day of or the morning of or something. Because I don't remember who it was that told me, but it was like Dell's not going to be there, and I hadn't got to see Dell in a while.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I'm going to finally get to see Dell again because we used to live pretty close to one another. And then when I moved off and he stayed there, But anyways,
Yeah, and it was like, I just got to the point, man, where I was just like, I was so defeated talking to people because I was like, fuck, like everybody's just gonna be disappointed.
mm-hmm.
And you know, uh, like Jeffrey Skelton hit me up, which most people know Jeffrey is a huge deathmatch fan. He's one of the most loyal fans to the deathmatch scene and the wrestling scene as there can be. And he hit me up the other day and he was like, "Hey man, I'm not going to be doing any shows for 2020. If like I can just get back whatever the sweatpants money would have been, that would be great." I immediately sent him, the money for what that was going to be, because most people just didn't care about the fucking pants or anything. Like they just had
Right.
fun at the show.
Yeah, I mean,
and I was like, because it sucks because like I wanted to do that shit, wanted people to get all their stuff and everything else because I was just like, fuck, like I don't want to be compared. And after, before we get into that, if you have any other questions about sickness, then we'll get into the aftermath of sickness.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty well, I think my big thing was like looking back at it, like I do wonder like the Memphis, like I don't know why, just like I don't know if it's just been around the area for so long, having a certain notation of Memphis and just how things are, like if it'd been like Nashville or something like that. But otherwise, I mean, like I said, honestly, like for the night I was there, I enjoyed it. I really did.
Man, and the crazy thing is like all the money spent, everything else, it wasn't surreal to me that I made this happen until Separate Ways hit and I saw Tremont walk out of the doorway. And it was like, for me, it was like I did it. Like, it may not have been in the capacity that I want it to be, but like I made that main event happen. I got Matt there. I got him paid. Like got him home on time. And like that was at that moment for me. It was like, okay, I at least got past this. And then then we got into day 2, and it was just trying to figure everything out.
Yeah, because I mean, and that's one of the things people outside the business don't understand is it's like whenever you invest, because it's like you said, you're not gonna have majority of the shows you have, you're not gonna have a show to where like the pre-sale gate, even if you get the money in advance, is gonna cover the cost of the show.
No,
it helps. But once you see that coming in and then you realize like some of those experiences, like you said, when you hear Separate Ways and you seen Tremont come down the way, you're like, okay, everything for the most part is going to be okay. This is actually happening.
Southern Sickness cost me $5,000.
Jesus.
No joke. Between talent, weapons, renting stuff, renting lights, renting equipment, fog machines, whatever, cost me $5,000. And Eric went through some shit and could only do so much. And so it was like all kind of like left to us to do. So like it cost me a lot of money, man. Some of the pre-sale kind of helped that, but it was nowhere near
right.
It was nowhere near 5Gs.
So I think one of the things that also frustrates me is like I said, from where Cape Girardeau, where we had Cape Championship Wrestling at, from Memphis is about 2 hour, 15-minute drive.
Yeah.
Now, so we use a lot of talent from the West Tennessee, Memphis area, which probably it's probably one of those things that like shows you this Memphis wrestling scene to begin with. Is we quit referring to it as Memphis wrestling; it's just all classified now as West Tennessee.
Right.
But that's another story for another day. But talking to some of these guys that were like bigger names down in the Memphis area, would talk to them, and like I don't know how many of them I talked to would come into our locker room, and I'd talk to them about like, yeah, Memphis is going to have this and this, and they'd all laugh, and the ongoing thing was, it'll never happen. It'll never happen.
Yep.
So, like, personally, like, I was glad to see it happen, just because you get these people, like, that's been in the area for, all these years, and they're saying this, but that gets into the other thing of, like, what do you think Memphis could have done differently for the show? Like, because you ended up using a local guy, couple of local guys, didn't you? And you got a ring out of Boonville.
Yeah, that was all Eric's deal. Eric was the one that like used Bam Bam Bundy, who like dude came and fucking didn't ask any questions, anything like that. Like he came and did what was asked of him.
Mm-hmm.
Eric was the one that took care of the ring and all that stuff. So he's like kind of the guy for the local scene. But man, as far as like it's not going to happen, I heard that from everywhere. Nobody thought this was going to happen. Nobody thought we were going to pull this off.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, fuck it. Like if I lose every dime I fucking have, like I'm going to make this show happen. And it goes back to, like I said, some, my wife busting her ass. She was pulling 14-hour days at the bar, working open to close, just to make sure that we had the ability to fly in Matt Tremont, to fly in Casanova Valentine, to pay Matt Tremont, to pay Arrow Boy, like.
So I was going to hold off on this till a little bit later in the podcast, but I'm going to go ahead and address this. This was another one of my problems I had. So, any other deathmatch tournament I've been to, or any other just indie show in general I've been to, there are green guys, there are young guys there that are they're trying to get in with the booker, they're trying to make a name for themselves, they're there to help clean up stuff like that. And literally for the show, there was not that there, and your poor wife was there having to sweep the damn glass out of the ring.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, I had Corey Barger, who's like my right-hand guy. Harbo, who's another guy that helps out. He was there helping, and then I had my wife, and it was just us, and like that was it, because like I'll call the dude out right now. Like Tristan Ramsey, I'm not sure where the fuck he's out of. But like he messaged the Trainwreck page about like wanting to get on the show. And Eric replied, and he's like, yeah, man, like you can come hang out if there's a spot open, but like we're always looking for more hands. And he's like, well, I'm not coming if I'm not booked. That, and guess who's never gonna fucking see a pro wrestling Trainwreck ring? That fucking guy. Because if you're, and the dude would have been in. That's the thing. The dude would have fucking got a spot. But decided because he wasn't booked, he wasn't going to come help.
And I think that's the mentality of people. It's like, well, why would you not take the chance? Like, I know here.
Especially in the South.
Right.
Especially in the South, dudes don't give a shit nowadays about paying dues and coming to help.
Because, I mean, it's like, that's how the business works. That's how people find out about you. It never... 99.9% of the time, it never works. You messaging the booking page or the Facebook page or the Twitter page or anything like that, being like, "Oh, hey, this is my highlight reel." Yeah, nobody's taking time to sit down and really watch that.
Right, because I get fucking 10 highlight reels a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not gonna sit there and take time out of my day to fucking watch your highlight video. Come and show up and help set up. If you watch the Rec Room show. The four-way that was supposed to be happened turned in like a 7-person scramble because those people just showed up to fucking help.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all right, great. You guys got your gear? Oh, you do? Great. You're on the show. And each of them got paid, mind you. You know, it wasn't in my budget. Wasn't in my budget to pay those people. And they might not have got much, but they got a payday that they didn't expect they were going to get.
Right.
You know? So it's like.
And these young guys, they don't understand, like, that's the business. That's how this works. That's, you know, that's real life. That's how it works. So if any up and coming wrestlers are listening to this right now, and you want to learn how to get booked somewhere, show up at the show, help out, introduce yourself, be professional, and that's
don't be a dickhead online.
Right.
Nobody cares about your 4-minute highlight video that your buddy Sean made.
Exactly.
Like, you know, unless your highlight video shows you at fucking GCW or PWG or, you know, wherever else, I don't give a shit about your highlight video.
So best believe if anybody's watching your highlight video you sent, it's probably sitting around a computer screen laughing.
More than likely.
So let's talk about the aftermath here. So, like I said, overall, I enjoyed night 1. I was able to, later on, be able to watch night 2. I really enjoyed it. I was glad to actually get to see one of your matches live. And so let's look at the aftermath of the Southern Sickness here.
It was rough, man, because, like, immediately when it came out that, like, people didn't get their VIP stuff, like, of course, the first thing was like, oh, he's just like Ian. He's just like his dad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I talked about earlier, like, no, like, he's fucked people intentionally. I did it by complete fucking accident because I just put way too much on my plate. Like, I don't think people realized, you know, I told you the amount that Sickness fucking cost.
Right.
You know, and I still have the notebooks to the breakdowns of what everybody's, you know, was getting and what the total ended up being and everything else. And that's not counting, you know, a $400 airplane from Mexico, a $260 airplane ticket from Philadelphia, a $280 ticket from Brooklyn. You know,
right.
It's not a cheap thing to do. On top of, you know, I mean, fuck, you saw how many light tubes we had.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of course, shout out to Jesse, who brought a fuck ton of those light tubes for us. But, you know, I still had to go get 700 of them from Pennsylvania. And I live in Jeffersonville, Indiana. You know, so that's not a small trip.
Right.
On top of paying for the tubes and everything else. So when Sickness comes to a close, I'm fucking broke. And, you know, on top of, dude, I bought 10 hotel rooms because I wanted to make sure everybody had a fucking place to stay.
Uh-huh.
I didn't want guys to have to fend for themselves. Like, you know, like some fucking promoters do.
Right.
And, you know, so you know, we're fucking broke. And, trying to figure out how to pay bills and everything else, and like seeing all this shit online, like, oh man, he's just like Ian, and it's heartbreaking because that's not the person that I am. I'm not going to intentionally fuck people over.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the VIP deal, like, I'm pretty sure I think I messaged you about this, like, when you announced it, because like I told you, you was like, all right, it gets all this, and I was just like, man, all I care about is like getting a photo and like getting a front row ticket, like. All that other stuff, it don't really matter to me.
Well, and it's so funny too, because like, after Sickness, man, I just kind of went. I wouldn't say necessarily into hiding or anything.
Uh-huh.
But like, I just kind of stepped away from even thinking about wrestling because I just didn't care anymore. I was like, I'm already labeled the fucking bad guy. What the fuck am I gonna do? And then, I don't know, I was sitting there one night, and I was like, you know what, fuck it. If I lose money next year, again, I lose money, like, I'm going to offer everybody, you know, that had a VIP ticket, a ticket to the show next year.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife was like, you think we can afford that? And I was like, fuck it, if we can't, like, you know, I was like, we'll have to figure it out. And so like my plan right now is just to get to find a good printer, get shirts printed up for next year, and hoping that people have the faith in us to buy shirts next year while they're at the show, to kind of make up for that money that we lost on giving people these tickets, to like make up for the shit last year. But I think now that 2019 sickness happened, and if 2020 sickness happens, as far as like this COVID stuff goes,
Mm-hmm.
I think people will be more inclined to show up now that they see that it's actually going to happen. Because I think that's why our ticket sales were so low. Because we ended up only doing like 60 people a night.
Uh-huh.
But I think that's why our ticket sales were so low, was because people were just so worried about making these plans to travel, buying an airplane ticket, and then the day before us going, oh, sorry, it's not happening. And
Yeah.
so I think now that it's happened, people see that I'm fucking determined to make it happen. I think now with 2020 rolling around, I think people are going to be more inclined to buy the tickets, support us. And right now, my plan is kind of see how things are sitting at the end of July. And, that's really going to be kind of the, you and I talked about this before we got on here, but I don't want people to pay, the money that they're paying and have to set 20 feet from the fucking ring.
Right.
So it depends on what the CDC guidelines are, what state guidelines are. But also, Cody Rice and I had this conversation. I care more about the safety of the wrestlers and the fans and everything else. That I feel like if numbers are still too high on this COVID thing, we'll just push sickness back. My plan at the moment is, if I have to not run sickness in October, that it will take place the first weekend of May.
Okay.
So that's because I think that gives us a good timeline as far as, because I don't want to say like, oh, if we cancel it in October, we're going to do it in February. Because right now we're just kind of living in an uncertain world, man. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow people, especially with the states reopening, tomorrow people could go out and, there could be a spike of,
right.
10,000 cases. It just really depends on the world we're living in today, what happens. So, bottom line for me is like, I don't want to cancel sickness, or postpone it, I should say. But if I feel it's not going to be safe for the fans and the wrestlers, I don't give a shit. Like, I would much rather people be safe, my friends be safe, the people that I care about, and
mm-hmm.
everybody that bought a ticket last year to Sickness, man, I got to talk to almost everyone, and got to be personal with all of them. And, I care about those people. I care about them, not just as somebody doing business, but somebody that, they supported me, supported this dream that I had, and the last thing I want to do is them come to this fucking event and get sick,
Right. Right. So let's talk about it. So if all things go according to plan, when it tentatively the middle of October for Southern Sickness, correct? 2020.
Yes.
You said it was 16th through the 18th?
16th and 17th
or 16th, 17th.
Yeah.
Okay. And then is it going to be back at the High Tone?
That is the plan at the moment. We've had conversations and everything else with them. They were really happy with just the atmosphere of last year.
Uh-huh.
They're in the works of getting a new bar. So it's kind of all on them at the moment. Because if I haven't got the chance to talk to Brian, who is the owner of High Tone, yet. Recently, I should say. I haven't got the chance to talk to him, but when I was there last year, they were working on buying a new bar, which the inside part would be big enough to hold the event in.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, so there's a potential that it could be in this new bar. It would still be the High Tone, but it just could be inside. So right now it's just kind of a waiting game, especially with all the bars being closed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't. That's kind of where we're at right now. It could be outside or it could be inside. I would much prefer it to be inside because I was flipping out all fucking week about the weather. But the tentative plan is the High Tone. It just depends on if it's going to be outside or inside, depending on what happens with their dealings with a new bar.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I expect a bigger crowd. I think that it'll do good now that the word's getting out about it. A couple of things going into it. Mr. Robert Young, Bob, he wanted to give you a shout out and tell you that he had a blast last year and he's looking forward to coming back this year.
Yeah, man, he was great, man. Like he was really an uplifting spirit of the entire weekend. Like he just kept complimenting on me on things and and how I took care of things and really really just made the weekend good for me because you know, even after sickness, when I would post stuff, he would post these nice comments and compliments and everything, and he just a really good solid dude as far as that.
Kind of going back what we were talking about with people, just like genuinely nice people, like in the business, stuff like that. He's been a loyal CCW fan since day one. One of the absolute nicest people in the world you can meet, and dude would give a shirt off your back to help anybody.
Right.
So yeah, he's definitely, and like I said, he had a blast. Like I got to talk to him Friday, and up there, and he was just like he was a kid at Christmas. He was so happy.
Yeah, man, it was great to see people's reaction and stuff. It was awesome.
And then the other one we had was from Andrew Lawler.
Okay.
Who wanted to know about as far as 2020 goes. I just did not do very well having this stuff pulled up here because I'm terrible at this stuff here. And on a side note, there's this guy, his name's Dalton Anthony, and I think you should probably give him a hard time because I think he's got you confused with DJ Hyde.
Yeah, I think so. I saw that dude's comment, and I was like, I definitely didn't film with Vice, so...
So, see, that was funny because when I read that, I was like, wait a minute. I watched the Vice documentary, and I'm pretty sure I don't remember him being there.
Yeah, I was also trying to, figure out, where my payment was for that.
Right?
So I was like, I don't know if I missed something, or...
So, Dalton Anthony deserves to get roasted right now while I try to find this comment for insulting you, calling you DJ Hyde.
You know, and the crazy thing is, man, is this dude randomly showed up at Sickness who works for PBS, but does this off project, and he gave me his card. I was already in my gear when he gave me the card. And so when I went and wrestled, I very much I wipe, especially at the end of shit, I wipe my face and I wipe my hand on my pants. And this dude's card just got soaked in blood. And so I have no idea what the guy's name is. We did, a bunch of people did interviews for him, and he shot a bunch of footage, and I have no idea who this dude is. So
I think it was what I was gonna ask you was there was a guy that took a photo of us, and I never knew whatever happened to it because I thought he said he was making a documentary or something.
Yeah, he was working on a project or something. So if that dude for some reason searches Southern Sickness and is listening to this, please contact me because I would love to see what became of this footage, because a bunch of people did interviews and everything else, and I have no idea what happened to it.
Yeah, because I'd like to see the photo you took.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, huh. Because it's kind of weird, but all right, here we go. Let's see. So Andrew Lawler wants to know: is Sickness 2 still intergender 100%? I'd prefer not personally. So what's the details with that here?
So my plan at the moment is for it to still be intergender. But like the issue is, man, it's just hard finding girls that are willing to like be as crazy as I need them to be. And of course, like I would love to bring over, the girls from Mexico, but I just can't afford,
Right.
$400 airplane tickets. So right now the plan is if I can find enough girls, it will still be intergender. But if not, I think we're at 5 right now, 4 or 5 females. They will still be in it, and then we'll just add 3 other guys to make it 16.
Okay.
That's kind of the tentative plan at the moment. Is it's just kind of really hard to find girls that are, I can be like, hey, there's a possibility you're going to wrestle in 700 light tubes.
Just be like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm down.
Well, man, the finals last year, I think our rough count was like almost 900.
Ooh.
So, I mean, it was an abundance. And, dude, and we didn't even put all of what we had left over. There was still probably 6 boxes of unused tubes.
Jeez. I mean, and it's not like one of those things you can store for next year either.
Yeah, and there were the 12-foot ones too. So I mean, like they're in a landfill or whatever in some part of Memphis, I'm guessing, because we just left them at Hightone next to the dumpsters. So I'm not that we left shit there before people get that twisted. We were told we could just leave them there.
So who have you got announced so far for Southern Sickness 2020?
Give me 1 second because I don't even have it in the top of my head. And I might be missing people, to be honest.
Okay.
So Cody Rice comes back. Obviously, he's the defending champion. Casanova Valentine makes his return because, like I said earlier in the podcast, he just booked himself, and I wasn't going to tell him no.
A guy like that, you don't tell no to.
Yeah. Josh Crane, who's fresh off, another tour of Japan, who I've been friends with for years. Josh is super excited about being in Southern Sickness this year. John Wayne Murdoch returns to the Southern Sickness Cup. And then the last guy that's been announced so far is Atticus Cogar.
Okay.
And then on the female side so far is Ludark and Thunder Kitty. Ludark, who's absolutely insane. And then we're filling in. There's females booked that we just haven't announced yet.
Okay.
So that's the, we'll start announcing those probably here shortly. And then the match that we've announced already is opening round. John Wayne Murdoch takes on Ludark Shaitan in the Unlucky Spa match, which is a barefoot match with hot coals, sawgrass, and unlike an Unlucky 13 match where you have to staple dollar bills to the person's body, this is barefoot, obviously, so you're stapling them to the person's foot.
Somebody's not going to have a good night.
Yeah, so it's going to be, already with the wheels in motion as far as, the craziness goes. And then on top of what we have announced already, the fucking plague bringer, Marcus Crane, the Dream Eater, is going to be our host for the entire weekend. And anybody that knows Marcus Crane knows Marcus loves to party.
Yes, that's true.
So, if he decides at, midway through a match that stipulation should be added or whatever, it's Marcus. He's unpredictable.
You may get a pull of vodka on you.
Yeah, you may get a pull of vodka on you. And he was so upset that I wasted vodka last year. He was like, "Why are you doing that?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. It was, cheaper than buying 18 bottles of rubbing alcohol."
Oh, that's fair.
And but he was so upset. But it was so funny because he made a post about like, "Oh, book me to host your shows," and I was like, way ahead of you because at Sickness last year, I told him, I was like, hey man, I don't want to have like a bunch of repeat guys, but I would love to have you come down and host the weekend. And he was like, oh, that'd be great. So he's gonna get paid to not fall in a bunch of shit and just party the entire weekend. So that would be good for him.
The American dream right there.
Right, man.
I was just glad I was not on that side for the pull of vodka. I mean, it wouldn't have been bad if I was like staying the whole weekend. But like I said, it's a 2 hour 15-minute drive in the middle of a Friday night.
Yeah,
crossing 3 states. Yeah.
If you would have got pulled over, you'd have been fucked explaining that. There was this guy with a bunch of tattoos who threw a pool of vodka on us.
So, are you familiar with the comedian Chelsea Handler?
Yeah.
Okay, so back in July, I went to see her in St. Louis at the pageant.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the meet and greet with her. So we go backstage, and apparently I'm not aware for like real famous celebrities, like there's a pseudo dress code.
Yeah.
So I'm there in my my cargo camo shorts and my Schlack and Marcus Crane Hate Trash Disaster shirt. So I go up to her to get my picture, and she says, Hate Trash Disaster. She's like, is that a band? I was like, no, it's like it's a deathmatch tag team. And she said, what's that? And immediately I'm thinking, how do I explain this? I was like, oh, well, it's deathmatch wrestling. Like WWF with like glasses and knives. And then like I could feel the security guards just coming closer and closer. And I'm thinking to myself, great, I'm going to jail. And she's like, amazing. Oh, well, that's weird. I was like, yeah. So yes, I can imagine like explaining it to her. I can imagine trying to explain to a cop, be like, no, officer, I'm actually completely sober. This guy, yeah. Here's the pictures. Like, that helps.
That's fantastic.
But yeah. So what are we looking at? So all things going according to plan, when do we look at tickets going on sale?
Hopefully, I'm going to shoot for that beginning of August. Okay. Just because I really just want to see where we're going to be at as a society at that point in time. Again, I have stuff written down. I have stuff wrote out. Plans are already made. I know where I'm getting stuff and what I'm doing. I just care about people's safety and don't want anybody to be in harm's way more than they normally are at a deathmatch show. That's a big thing to me, is I just want everybody to be happy and healthy, and if they say, oh, you can limit ticket sales, I'm fine with that, whatever. If they say that spectators have to be 15 feet away, then I'm probably just going to say, hey, we'll just, postpone this thing and do it another time.
Okay. Awesome. Sounds good. Well, I tell you what, I appreciate having you on here. Looking forward to this year's Southern Sickness Cup. Like I said, had a blast last year. Tell everybody where they can find you at on the social media.
You can find me on Facebook, obviously, under my birth mother given name, which is John Glenn. You can follow Pro Wrestling Trainwreck at Pro Wrestling Trainwreck. I'm working on another side project with John Wayne Murdoch called Deathmatch World, which details will be dropping about that very soon. And then you can follow me on Twitter at DevilSun_Rotten. And then I'm also on Instagram at DevilSun138. I don't post too much on there, so if you want to see my kid, that's about all you're getting there. But yeah, man, the main thing is just follow Pro Wrestling Trainwreck. I'm going to be doing this Deathmatch World stuff here soon, which is a side project not related to Trainwreck. So I think it's going to be overall fun time. Probably put some more stress on myself than I need to, but just trying to be creative and think outside the box.
I'm just trying to figure out how you have a Twitter and Instagram handle as Devil Sun, but did not put JC as Jesus Christ Rotten.
Hey, man, I don't know.
Awesome. You got anything else you want to put over? Anybody else you want to shout out while we're here?
man, just the people at High Tone, Brian, all his staff that helped make Southern Sickness happen last year. John Wayne Murdoch and Neil Diamond Cutter, who were two guys that really helped kind of bring that show together last year and kind of help bring the stress level down. Corey, who I was talking about, is my lead builder, Harbo, and obviously my wife, man. Without her, Pro Wrestling Trainwreck, Southern Sickness really don't exist. She's the one kind of footing the bill for it, making things happen, letting me live my dream. And people like you, man, who support what we do. It means the world to me. Guys like you, Jeffrey, Andrew Lawler, people like that. Just really, 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 I'm grateful to for letting me do this, and hopefully I'm going to get to do Southern Sickness for many years to come.
Hey, we appreciate all that you do for us with it. And if you've listened to this and you're enticed and you want to indulge and see what was Southern Sickness 2019, they should be able to get it on Smart Mark Video, correct?
Yep, smartmarkvideo.com. You can go and watch Pro Wrestling Trainwreck. We have a couple other shows up there, like the infamous Rec Room show that we talked about from New Albany. We got a bunch of content up there right now. Every little bit helps during this crazy time. So if people want to support us and support buying more stuff for Southern Sickness, that's where kind of all the Smart Mark money is going to towards these days.
Okay, awesome. Well, like I said, once again, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to do this. I really appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who's listening to this. Make sure if you have any questions, comments, concerns, shoot us an email at bigleesworld@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Big Lee's World. Make sure to like, share, subscribe this episode. Make sure to check out Pro Wrestling Trainwreck. Be on the lookout on their page for information on Southern Sickness 2020. Once again, JC, thanks for joining us. And as always, everybody, 2 scoops of whoop, whoop, whoop.